I'm gonna put these on, and we'll be ready to go. And are you sure you don't need anything? You're good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So, Tim, you're up to speed, so whenever you're ready.
I was just like always roaming. I was always out on my own. Like it could be like 3 in the morning and I'd be out. I actually put myself in foster care. So that was something I didn't really tell anybody because I didn't want to upset my parents. I just like went to the police station and then told them what was going on at home and then asked to be put in a foster home.
I just need affordable childcare. It shouldn't cost me out of pocket over $300, almost $400 a week just to have childcare for my kids. It's like more than my rent. Childcare and rent aren't my only bills. I have groceries, school loans, everything. So it's just the whole overall picture is just overwhelming.
They can't rationalize going to college at all because they don't have time. They're like, oh, I work, I have to, my car is not working right, I gotta fix that up. I have the second jobs. A lot of people have second jobs.
So at the moment, I work 3 jobs. So it's just finding the money where you can get it. That's one thing that students really need.
I'm a single mom, so it's incredibly stressful. How am I gonna work to pay rent and buy food and still be a happy, positive mom for my kid?
We were holding out that hope that Social Security was gonna come through for us, and maybe the bank would, wait a little bit longer. At the end of July, we had gotten a note and said that, there's starting the proceedings. I had no place to go. I had to keep things as normal as possible for my kids that were 9 and 11 at the time.
Working in Burlington, feeding that to Salvation Army, 10 or 15% of that 100 people that I fed every evening were guys that were in my unit and were homeless.
I find it very, very difficult to understand how, as a result of the war and other things in their life, that they don't have a roof over their head.
I just asked the assistant manager if there was any chance they could hire me if I was only available at nights after 4 when my husband gets home. He said no, we only hire people with open availability. I'm not a lazy person. I would totally be willing to work instead of the times that I've gone and applied for any type of benefit.
We struggle. My season gets slow, my fiance's season gets slow, and we're just barely making it.
Before my dad died, he owned his own construction company. With my mom struggling with addiction, my dad dying when I was 10, and he also struggled with addiction, I realized that I needed to increase my skills for my own personal path.
It was the middle of February in a Vermont winter, and I was living in my house with my kids without heat. And I had begun burning our furniture to stay warm. I was stealing firewood from our next door neighbor. It was bad. I wanted to get better. I wanted to be able to be the kind of mom for my kids that they deserved.
Vermont as a whole is small enough that you should feel as though you always know the neighbor, somebody knows somebody, and that's going to continue. We only have 600,000 people here. Everybody knows somebody.
I would say that we live in Vermont, and I just think we can do better.
So, what you just heard was a compilation of Vermont voices, an attempt to bring home and contextualize a story that data and experience are telling us. That for all our passion and all our effort, right now it remains too hard for too many people in too many communities to find decent footing on the path to opportunity. When I spoke last year at Shelburne Museum, I offered a vision for philanthropy that would grow in impact, scale, and relevance through creativity, ingenuity, and a willingness to explore. It's important to remember that exploration is not always a comfortable process. It requires the ability to learn, adapt, react, and respond to changing circumstances and deeper awareness. If nothing else, this past year It's been a year of changing circumstances and new awareness for this state and the nation. It's been a year of learning through loss. If the heart of community is a sense of common experience, we have lost any illusion that people experience the economy, society, and our civic institutions in a common way. People's lived experience compels fundamentally different choices: furniture or firewood, a paycheck or an appointment for treatment, childcare, college, or job, missing a shift or missing class. It's not news that we're divided along a dozen different fault lines nationally, but if you feel like some of those fractures are less acute in Vermont, I'd urge you to take the long route home or to spend some time in some of the few remaining places where people intersect across community lines, places like the DMV and the emergency room. We are all Vermonters, but we don't all experience life through the same lens. The distance between the opportunities available to us is vast, and that distance is dangerous to our sense of community and to the ideals we hold dear. The opportunity gap represents something that should make us all very uncomfortable. The idea that the odds of your success in life depend more on family and the geography of your birth than anything else. In Vermont, that gap is augmented by a pervasive lack of hope in rural communities. These forces manifest most powerfully in the prospects facing the next generation, and they are part and parcel of the demographic and workforce challenges the state faces. It's hard to say that our communities are healthy and vital if that's the case, and it has long-term economic, social, and civic implications. Nationally, the fundamental idea that if you work hard, you can get ahead is under threat. If you were born in the 1940s, you had a 90% chance of earning more than your parents did. If you were born in the 1980s, you have a 50-50 chance of earning more than your parents. That's a coin toss. Ben Bernanke, former chair of the Federal Reserve, gave a speech to European economic leaders this past June titled, "Growth is Not Enough." He described how, despite the economic growth of recent years, working and middle-class families are struggling to maintain their standard of living. He specifically identified a toxic mix of stagnant wages, declining economic mobility, and social dysfunction. The underlying factors are so pervasive that they actually shorten lives. Middle-aged Americans without post-secondary education or training are the only demographic in the developed world where life expectancy is actually going down. This trend is driven by chronic disease, opioids, and suicide. A trip to nearly any ER in Vermont will remind you of the breadth of the opioid challenge, but as one physician recently told me, our substance issues are deeper than that, and they stem from the twin scourges of despair and hopelessness. So let me give you some more local context for where we stand right now. The middle class in Vermont has shrunk in recent decades. 46,000 families struggle to make ends meet. That's nearly 1 in 4 of our neighbors who are stretching simply to keep their heads above water. There's no region in Vermont where a kid born in the bottom 20% has a better than 1 in 10 shot at attaining the top 20%. 40% of births in Vermont are funded by Medicaid. More than 40% of young people show up at kindergarten not ready to learn. And more than 40% aren't continuing their learning after high school. We know that there are jobs in Vermont, but they require additional learning. 52 of 54 high-growth, high-quality jobs identified by the J. Warren and Lois McClure Foundation in that Pathways to Promising Careers brochure require a certificate, degree, or additional training. So while workforce is one of our biggest economic and community challenges, and employers are clamoring for access to people with skills, nearly half of Vermont 18-year-olds are foregoing the best bet for an economically independent future. This is squandered potential that we can ill afford. We know from Change the Story and the work of the Vermont Women's Fund that the data gets even worse if you start looking at it by gender. The poverty rate for families headed by single women is 37%, 9 times that of married couples. Across the river, in New Hampshire, in a survey of Coos County youth by the Carsey Institute at UNH, funded by our friends at the Tillotson Fund and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, it tells us the Coos class of 2009 reported that it was easy to find a job The number declined from 67% to 19% between 2009 and 2011. Nearly a 50% decline in 2 years in the sense of opportunity among young people in that county. We know the same demographic and economic factors are at play in Vermont. Most of the state has yet to recover from the 2008 recession. Putting it more directly on the civic implications of these trends, Robert Putnam, our guest speaker at the 2015 annual meeting and the author of Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis, wrote, quote, "We might ponder whether the bleak, socially estranged future facing poor kids in America today could have unanticipated political consequences tomorrow." The data tells a story, the voices tell a story, the literature tells a story. And it's a story that many of you see in your day-to-day. The people your organizations serve, your neighbors, the classmates of your children and grandchildren, the faces you see on the sidewalks, curbs, and dirt roads. I fully recognize, looking across this group, that many of you are already hard at work, trying to make things better for folks like the ones we heard in the audio, and that you're well aware of the intransigence of the opportunity gap, where it has its roots, and the consequences of ignoring it. Failing to invest and engage on this issue will cost all Vermonters in the long run, with greater need for assistance, stalled economic growth, and poorer health outcomes. And so the question falls to the VCF. What is the role of philanthropy? Where do we start? The power of philanthropy is the power to evoke an enduring vision, whether it is an individual, a family, or this foundation. Philanthropy is uniquely positioned to keep its focus on things that matter. To figure out where we go from here, I think we have to start at the beginning. We ground ourselves in our mission. We start with the very elements of our name, community, Vermont. The heart of community is a sense of common experience. Right now, we see no greater opportunity to achieve impact than to go to work on this structural gap that faces Vermont youth and families and divides our experience in the world and in our communities. The truth is that the VCF has been working towards this for some time. As an organizing principle, you see kernels of it in our Understanding Vermont reports, in Putnam's visit in 2015, the work of our partner organizations and initiative funds, the McClure Foundation, and all that they have done and are doing to help Vermonters get access to the training and education they need, the Permanent Fund for Vermont's children, their passionate commitment to high quality and affordable care across the state, the Northeast Kingdom Fund, the Vermont Women's Fund, and the High Meadows Fund and their focus on resilient communities and working farms and forests. Key parts of our work will remain unchanged. We will always be a source of broad-based competitive grant funding and shared knowledge across an array of issues. A high-capacity, high-impact nonprofit sector is a cornerstone to the achievement of strong communities. Our donors and our community of fund holders are diverse in their passions, and we will never flag in helping them find and fund the causes they love in the places they care about. Deepening our commitment to address the opportunity gap means focusing our work, our discretionary work, in 4 core areas. Quality early care and learning, so that all Vermont children have the strongest possible start. College and career training, so that Vermonters can connect with promising careers and quality jobs don't go unfilled for lack of a qualified person. Support for youth and families in all their multi-generational and multifaceted forms, so that young people have a chance to grow in a safe, stable, and healthy environment. Economic vitality and community development. Foundations are waking up to the fact that place-based philanthropy is a vital tool for rural community and economic development, fostering entrepreneurship, local investment, conservation, and downtown revitalization. Truthfully, if we fix early care, college and career training, and offer transformative support for youth, without a sense of opportunity, connection, and hope in their community, you're going to have another generation that's asked to choose between where their family is and where their future is. We are determined not to let that happen. And that means using 3 tools effectively. Community engagement. This is about listening well. hearing from a diversity of perspectives and helping advance ideas generated within and by communities. We will work more closely than ever before with our partners at the Vermont Council on Rural Development, fostering grassroots energy and building platforms for shared experience, whether it is a community space, a conservation and trail project, or a cultural event. Partnership. This is not work we undertake alone by any stretch. This broad framework offers our supporting organizations, initiative funds, and grantee partners a chance to connect in a way that achieves greater impact together. We'll seek stronger partnerships built and maintained over time with organizations prepared to strategically advance this work. Grants and community investment, a greater range and type of financial support, augmenting our grant making with place-based mission investments that strengthen Vermont communities. With its Vermont investment commitment, the VCF was an early adopter of place-based mission investing. It's time to explore how we take it to the next level, working with funders and bringing managed capital back to work in Vermont communities through revitalization projects, micro-lending, job creation and retention, while facilitating local and employee ownership. Over time, the record is clear. Communities are incredibly vulnerable when ownership gets too far removed. Until circumstances reveal a different set of fundamental challenges on the horizon, we are going to work on the idea that it is vital for the health of all Vermont communities that the voices represented in that audio have the same prospects for economic security in their future as anyone else. That in Vermont, the place you're born and the circumstances of your family shouldn't calcify your prospects for the future. When you think about all the things that have to go right for someone to break these cycles, how hard it is if you're coming from behind, starting and staying on track in education, staying healthy, finding a job, and connecting with your neighbors. That is where we'll be most active, because that's what it takes to build strong communities. We suffer no false illusion about the breadth and depth of the challenge. These are structural and systemic issues that can seem distant and out of reach. Bernanke's remarks identified root causes and global trends in inadequate domestic policy. But because we believe in Vermont and we believe in the power of philanthropy, we believe that it doesn't have to be that way. We can't afford to find ourselves a decade out, wondering what we might have done differently and why we didn't heed the sense of uncertainty as the economic, social, and civic backbone of rural communities erodes. If not us, then who? It falls to every one of us to ask ourselves how the work we're doing connects to the voices of the folks we just heard from, how our work connects to the goal of more vital Vermont communities, how we stitch together a stronger sense of common experience. We don't expect to end poverty in Vermont or to guarantee economic vitality, but we do believe that the work we do together will matter for every person who sees a door open where one was previously closed, and for every community that starts to see the early blossoms of renewal. So last year we talked about coming together every year and why it's important, why we do it. We do it, as I said, to be reminded of what connects us. We do it to be inspired by the work of leaders among us like Sister Janice. But I also hope what connects us tonight is our recognition of these challenges, our passion for the potential of Vermonters and Vermont communities, and our passion for the journey that lies ahead. I hope you're with us. Thank you very much.